Facing the furious Cynthia, Charlie just smiled indifferently, and asked her, "Big New Year, don't you stay in Eastcliff to prepare for the new year? Came to Orr's Hill to find trouble for me, persuade mother-in-law, and ask my wife to divorce me. You can do all kinds of mischievous things, can't I play you around yet?" Cynthia's expression flashed a bit awkward, and then she gritted her teeth and said, "I'm doing all for your own good. Look at your wife. How can she be worthy of you?" Charlie said in a cold tone. "Can my wife be worthy of me? I don't need you to point fingers here. Today's matter is just a small lesson for you. If you know me, please go back to Eastcliff as soon as possible. Otherwise, I will not let you stay in Orr's Hill for the new year." Cynthia was immediately furious. She struggled to get up, but was pushed back by the man in black next to her. She could only grit her teeth and shouted, "Charlie! Do you dare to threaten me?" Charlie nodded and said blankly, "Now it's just threatening you. If you really annoy me, I might be going to hit you. Dare you?" Cynthia gritted her teeth and said, "If you dare to move me, I will fight you." Charlie snorted and said, "Even my subordinates can slap you. Why don't I dare? The reason why I don't want to hit you is because I don't want to dirty my hands." Cynthia yelled like a ghost, "The man who moved me, I will kill him sooner or later. And your mother-in-law, that shrew dared to beat me too. I will definitely want her to be broken into pieces." Charlie frowned slightly and raised his eyebrows and said, "What? You're still so arrogant, right? Okay, then you don't want to go back. Let's celebrate the new year in Orr's Hill." Cynthia asked, "Do you want to detain me?" "Yes." Charlie nodded. "You use the word very well, just to detain you." Cynthia was mad and shouted, "I'll give you the courage." Charlie said calmly, "I don't need you to give it, I have already decided. Are you not convinced?" "Okay, when will you be convinced, and when will you leave?" Cynthia yelled hysterically. "Charlie! I'm your elder anyway." "It's Cynthia Wade. You can't be so presumptuous to me, elder?" Charlie asked coldly. "You keep saying that it's my elders and my aunts. Then I ask you, where were you when I was in the orphanage?" Cynthia was speechless. Charlie asked again. "Let me ask you again, when I was an adult, where were you when I was working on a construction site?" Cynthia was still speechless. Charlie asked again. "Also, when I got married, where was Miss Cynthia Wade?" Cynthia's expression was dark, and she wanted to refute him, but she didn't know where to start. Charlie said at this time, "You, aunt, never cared about me or helped me. After all, life is like this. People have to learn to rely on themselves, but you not only didn't help me, but also came to provoke the relationship between me and my wife. What is your intention?" I. Cynthia quibbled, "I asked that Claire divorce you for your own good." "That kind of woman doesn't deserve you." Charlie nodded and said, "Then I will leave you in Orr's Hill to sharpen your temper, and the same is for your good. After all, if your personality is not restrained, I don't know what catastrophe you will make in the future. Maybe your own life will be in danger." Cynthia gritted her teeth and said, "Dare you? Give me a cell phone, I want to call your grandpa." Charlie handed her the phone indifferently and said, "Come on, use my phone, call now." After finishing speaking, he said to the black-clothed person beside her, "Unlock her handcuffs." The man in black immediately followed suit. After Cynthia regained her freedom with both hands, she immediately grabbed the phone from Charlie, put a number, and pressed the dial. After a few prompts on the phone, an old but very thick voice came. "Hello, who?" Cynthia heard the old master's voice and cried and said, "Dad, it's me, Dad." "Cynthia?" Zhangchen, on the other end of the phone, blurted out, "How are you? Have you encountered any danger?" Cynthia cried and said, "I am detained by Charlie, and he said he wouldn't let me go back to Eastcliff for the new year. Dad, this lad has no respect, and is arrogant. You have to help me out." Zhangchen said in surprise, "What's the matter? Why did you have a conflict with Charlie?" Charlie took the phone directly at this time, and said coldly, "She carried me, found mother-in-law, and asked mother-in-law to persuade my wife to divorce me. Is this the Wade family's style of doing things?" Zhangchen was startled, hesitated for a moment before sighing. "Charlie, she is Cynthia Wade, your aunt after all." Charlie asked back, "What's the matter? What right does she have to interfere with my freedom of marriage?" "Don't say she doesn't have this right, even you don't have this right," Zhangchen said with emotion. "Hey, you were right, she really shouldn't do this." I apologize to you for her. You can let her come back, Charlie said coldly. I said, leave her in Orr's Hill for the new year, and I will let her go back after the new year, but before the new year, no one can let her leave Orr's Hill. Not even the King of Heaven. Zhang Chen on the other end of the phone hesitated for a moment, and said helplessly, all right, it's up to you. When these words came out, Cynthia looked desperate, and blurted out and pleaded, Dad. I want to go back to Eastcliff to accompany you to celebrate the new year, Dad, Zhang Chen said earnestly. Cynthia, your character is really too hot. Take advantage of this lesson. Take advantage of your temper. Don't be 50 years old, and make trouble like young people all day long. Cynthia suddenly blocked up and didn't know what to say. Zhang Chen said again, Charlie, come home if you have time. Grandpa is very. Before Zhang Chen finished saying the 3 words, I miss you very much, Charlie directly hung up the phone. He has no relationship with Zhang Chen, not to mention that he is more or less responsible for the death of his parents, so Charlie is even more impatient with him. As soon as the phone hung up, Cynthia choked up and asked, Charlie, let me celebrate the new year in Orr's Hill. I want to spend the new year alone in the presidential suite in Shangri-La. Charlie smiled and said, Shangri-La's presidential suite? I think you want to be blinded. I will rent you a house in the village in the city and let you live there for a long time. What? Cynthia collapsed and said, You ask me to live in the village in the city? You are so cruel, Charlie sneered, and suddenly remembered that it was the Chinese New Year. Delon, who came to Orr's Hill on a bicycle, didn't know where he went. So he directly called Elsa. As soon as the phone call, Elsa asked happily, Charlie, why did you think of calling me? Charlie asked her. Elsa, where is your cousin Delon? Elsa said, he told me this morning that he was about to cross the Yangtze River, and he might be able to reach Orr's Hill tonight. Charlie frowned. Why is he so slow? Elsa said helplessly. He had a small accident on the bike and injured his arm, so he slowed down. Charlie asked again, have you found a house for him in the village in the city? Elsa said, I've found it, according to your request, 500 a month rent. Charlie gave a hum and said, okay, I will check it out tomorrow. Hanging up the phone, at this moment, Orville came over with Ragnar, who was wearing a black cloth cover. Charlie said to him immediately, arrange for someone to go to the village in the city, rent the worst single room, arrange it for Ms. Wade to stay there for 7 nights, and she will not be allowed to go out for these 7 days. She buys food, whether it is ingredients or daily necessities, only the most common ones are allowed, understand? Orville nodded immediately and said, okay master, I will arrange this.